Hello everyone, I am NIDHIN JOSE from team ENLITE. So today in session 2 environment, we will be discussing one of the wider areas of environment as a subject. It is nothing but biodiversity conservation both at international level and at national level. So this is the area, like I mentioned in the first session, which is drawing more number of questions in UPSC prelims. So today we will be, I have already structured the whole topic for you, because these are the structure is focusing mainly on both national and international initiatives of biodiversity conservation. So these areas we will be having a short introduction and a short explanation about all the areas, and you can actually dig deep into this in order to learn biodiversity conservation in detail. So if once you get covered all these areas which we are going to mention today, then you will definitely have the upper edge or upper hand in tackling questions related to biodiversity conservation. So first of all, let us structure the topic. Biodiversity conservation can be classified into at two levels. First of all, the international level. Even though we say the conservation from international level, it is focusing on, we will be focusing on conservation in India. So those initiatives which are initiated by the international agencies or multilateral agencies or intergovernmental agencies or organizations, which are actually has got some relevance with India. So we will be discussing that. Then we will be focusing on mainly the governmental initiatives that are mainly related to biodiversity conservation in India. So at international level, we can categorize the types of conservation into three. Okay, the types of conservation into three. The first one, those conventions which are related to biodiversity conservation, where we will be studying United Nations Convention for Biodiversity, and then the Convention on Migratory Species or CMS, then CITES or the Convention to Regulate Trade of Endangered Species, and then traffic. Okay, this is also a convention which is supplementary to this restriction of trade of endangered species or vulnerable species across the world. Then a convention called Ramsar Convention, which actually draws its name from the place where the convention has happened, because Ramsar is a place in Iran where the convention has happened, and it related to the conservation of wetlands across the world. Then these are the major conventions which we need to study, and then we will be discussing the protected area networks across the world. Okay, because even though we don't have to study the specific sites across the world, our only headache or burden will be to study those sites which are initiated by the international agencies and which are in India. So these are the biodiversity hotspots, World Heritage Sites, the sites under UN, MAN and UNESCO's Man and Biosphere Program, and the sites under Ramsar Convention. I will be explaining in detail, not completely, but a little bit I will be explaining later. Then we will be studying those agencies which are actually functioning for biodiversity conservation, or which has got the prime responsibility as biodiversity conservation. These are nothing but IUCN, the most famous NGO you will be knowing about their Red Data book and all, right? So IUCN or International Union for Conservation of Nature, then World Wildlife Fund or WWF, then Conservation International, which has got some unique role in actually establishing biodiversity hotspots across the world. Then BirdLife International, which is also an important organization, which UPSC has already asked a question from this organization 2 years back. And these are the major international initiatives for biodiversity conservation. At the national level, we'll be discussing it later. So first of all, we'll discuss this part. Okay, conventions. In conventions, what you have to study, or how the questions used to come from this area. That is what we need to focus, right? So regarding conventions, first of all, they will ask about the mother organization behind the convention, or which NGO or which intergovernmental organization which actually has got these conventions related to biodiversity conservation. So when did it happen? The next thing is when was its origin, or how that is getting progress. These are the questions you need to search for while you study the major conventions. The first and foremost is the UNCBD or United Nations Convention for Biodiversity Conservation. And this is one of the three important convention which actually came out from the world famous 1992 Sustainable Development Summit, or which we otherwise call as the Rio Summit. So CBD is the overarching mechanism which actually deals with biodiversity conservation, and they have got their own specific initiatives, like if I want to mention one or two, like the Nagoya Protocol, the Cartagena Protocol. Those are the protocols which are supplementary to this convention. So why I did mention all these things, because you need to get exposed to all these words, right? I'm not going to go in detail, but you need to study all these things. What are their mechanisms, how effective this convention is, or what are the initiatives that got successful, and which is the mother organization behind it and their origin. So that is about CBD. Then related to conservation on migratory species. This is a set convention which actually controls what the international cooperation that actually streamlines the laws, initiatives which protects the migratory species, especially birds. You will be knowing that there are several migratory birds comes to India, like Amur falcon, Siberian crane, then the pelicans, etc. Right? So in order to protect these sort of migratory birds and also other organisms, one major important sector of organism is the aquatic organisms. We have a convention, CMS. Okay, the CMS also you need to study. Even India is also a party to it. So what is their purpose, which is the mother organization behind it, and how effective is this convention going on? Or very recently, is there any particular peculiar initiative under this convention has happened? So all these things you need to study. The same thing is applicable to all the conventions. CITES convention is an important convention that actually controls illegal wildlife trade. You will be knowing that there is large number of rhino poaching is going on there in Assam, right? You used to have many Hindu news or other newspapers reporting related to this rhino poaching, etc. So basically, what for this is happening? This is mainly for the products or animal products or wildlife products that is actually required in the illegal market, especially the hub for that is the South Asian market. So in order to control all these illegal activities, the international coordination is established under the CITES agreement. So it is a mandatory agreement which is India is also a party to it, which actually controls or restricts the illegal wildlife trade. Basically it focuses, even though it focuses on endangered species, it contains a large list of animals and plants, okay, which actually got regulated under this convention. So then comes traffic. Traffic is a special initiative for the control of wildlife trade only. So other than CITES, you can also get familiar about traffic also. Then about Ramsar. Ramsar Convention, which actually happened in 1971, which focuses on nothing but conservation of wetlands across the world. Even India is also a land which is rich in wetlands, and we have also got many Ramsar Convention listed wetlands is there. That is why I have already mentioned Ramsar sites here. So those that I will be discussing later. So Ramsar Convention also you need to study. Is there any mother organization? As such, there is no mother organization for Ramsar Convention. That convention itself acts as an organization. Then what are their peculiarities and what are their role? Is there any other agencies which are party to this convention? Those sort of things will come as a statements in UPSC prelims. Then comes the protected area networks. This term will be something new to you, but the protected area network is as a general concept. I can define it as the areas which has got some sort of specialized protection. So it is actually defined by IUCN, and there are several categories also. But what we need to know is that for some reason, some areas across the world are being protected. So those are called the protected area networks, and even these areas are connected, okay, connected under this kind of convention or connected by a mother organization or a controlling organization. That is why they are called networks. So the examples for them mostly are listed here, and first and foremost one is the biodiversity hotspot. Biodiversity hotspot is nothing but the regions which are having highly endemic biodiversity, which is also facing a threat. It has got its own criteria, but hotspots are the most sought after regions of the world which we need to protect, otherwise the biodiversity which are present there will be facing some sort of threat. And in India also we have got some of the hotspots. The most important one is our Western Ghats itself, where it is categorized as one of the, even there is a subcategorization under this which is having more concern, that is called the hottest of hotspots. Even Western Ghats is also a hottest of hotspots under this sort of protected area, and it is actually done by the one of the agencies listed here. It is nothing but the Conservation International, which looks after the hotspots, their listing, their entry, and also their conservation. Then comes the World Heritage Site. You will be knowing about this World Heritage Site, right? So it is actually an initiative by UNESCO. It contains both cultural and natural sites. Our area of concern as far as environment and ecology is concerned is the natural sites. Natural sites are categorized as World Heritage Site because of their peculiar geography, biodiversity, the composition of ecosystem, or their particular interaction, ecological interaction also. These are the criteria that are normally taken for recognizing a particular site as a World Heritage Site. So in that also India is having around 7 or 8 okay, World Heritage Sites in India. So you have to study which all sites are there, what are their peculiarities, etc. Then comes Man and Biosphere Program. It is also an UNESCO initiative which focusing on human, which actually focuses on human interaction to protect, or human initiative to protect this sort of threatened areas or vulnerable areas or more biodiverse areas of the world. So here MAB's focus is that to make inclusive protection possible. And then comes Ramsar site. Those are the sites across India where Ramsar Convention protects its own particular wetlands. So India is a mainly rich in terms of lakes, then comes other reservoirs, etc. Right? So these are listed under Ramsar sites as a category for protection. Then comes agencies. These are basically NGOs. And these NGOs actually focuses on protection of biodiversity. They have their own set initiatives, like they may categorize a particular species, or likewise I have already said they will categorize particular regions for protection, like CI is protecting hotspots. Okay, so this sort of organizations are NGOs basically focusing on some initiatives for protection of biodiversity across the world. And for that, what you need to know is that which all are the party organization that is doing some sort of initiative, and what all are their specific initiatives. Now this concludes the international level of conservation. Now we'll move on to the national level of conservation. This is quite a long list compared to the international level, because in India we have got so many initiatives for biodiversity conservation. The irony is that even after all these initiatives, the condition for the major organisms or plants or animals is getting more pathetic and pathetic year after year. That is its irony. But if we can properly execute all these initiatives, it will be offering something good for our sustainable ecosystem and also for sustainable development. So we'll look into the areas. So it can be categorized into two mainly. The first is species targeted program. That means those initiatives which are targeting one single species, because those are called mainly India's charismatic species. That means those species which has got some respect and value among humans. Those are called charismatic species, and these species are protected by the government specifically. For that we have got projects. Okay, for that first I'll be discussing that. We have got projects. You will be knowing about the Project Tiger initiative, right? Likewise, there is Project Elephant, Project Snow Leopard. Project Snow Leopard is actually a cat species, cat in the sense a higher order cat which lives in the higher altitude of Himalayan region especially. And then come Hangul, or otherwise it is called Kashmiri stag, which is an antelope which lives in the same trans-Himalayan regions of India. Then comes gharial, or it is an aquatic organism. Even though it looks like crocodile, it is actually a non-harmful organism, lives in the riverine ecosystems of central India. Then comes our own vulture, which is also facing a threat. So for all these organisms we have got a set project. Okay, what we need to study is that when this project has happened and what all initiatives are taken under this project and what exactly is the fruitful outcome of the project. And as far as Project Tiger is concerned, we have increased the number of tigers in the last decade. So that is an initiative, that is a positive outcome about Project Tiger. Likewise, you have to study some outcomes of this specific projects. So that is the first part. Then comes to ecosystem specific initiatives at the national level. We have got many acts and policies covering our to protect our wildlife and forest ecosystem. Then we have got the same protected area network initiated by the national government in India or by the people themselves, so that we'll be studying. Then we have got many nodal institutions which carry out majority of this protection initiatives. Under acts and policies, the major act that actually deals with biodiversity conservation is that the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972. It is having many initiatives. Even the major 4 protected area networks, here we can see the wildlife sanctuary, national park, conservation reserve and community reserves are initiated by the Wildlife Protection Act itself. And even Wildlife Protection Act also enlists many of the species and protects them from hunting, etc. Right. So that is why we have got some schedules in the Wildlife Protection Act. Last year, UPSC asked some question from this area also. Then the National Biodiversity Act, which focuses on biodiversity conservation, which actually draws its inspiration from the Convention on Biodiversity from the United Nations. And then we have got action plans which actually gives directions to streamline the conservation initiatives. Or these are only direction, there won't be set strategies, but this will be aiming more on how to do it or what to achieve. Okay, or what to achieve in a recent future. So for that we have got a National Biodiversity Action Plan on the sidelines of National Biodiversity Act. And very recently in 2017 we have got a National Wildlife Action Plan also, where we are aiming to protect this biodiversity through a particular vision. So vision comes under action plans and execution mainly comes under the acts. So moving on from acts and policies, we have got protected area networks. Like I mentioned, out of this 4 protected area networks which are specifically categorized or sourced out from the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972, these are national parks, wildlife sanctuary, conservation reserve and community reserve. National park and wildlife sanctuary, many of you will be having a confusion that what exactly is the difference between a national park or a wildlife sanctuary. Okay, as far as its legal aspects are concerned, there is not much difference because the procedure for declaring a particular area as a national park or a wildlife sanctuary are more or less similar. The difference is in the intensity, how intense the protection is. In that aspect, national park holds the most protection. Then comes wildlife sanctuary, because many of the human activities are banned in national park, but it is only restricted in wildlife sanctuary. Then conservation reserve and community reserve are 2 particular protected area networks where the public's cooperation is actually required. Public's cooperation is actually required. Then sacred groves, these are the areas which are protected by the people themselves, and government only plays the second fiddle. Okay, you'll be knowing about the temple forest across Kerala, right? And likewise, there is many of the regions in India, especially northeast and all, people protects a particular place to worship or for as a tradition. Because in northeast and all, people has got their own ancestral worship or natural worshipping in relation with the sacred groves only. So that's there also government offers some sort of support for protecting those sort of areas. Then biosphere reserves, these are nothing but the particular area that comes under man and biosphere programs only, but government can also declare biosphere reserves in India without the recognition of MAB. Later they used to keep this for MAB recognition. So if they recognize, it got a higher category of consideration. So in India we have got around 18 biosphere reserves, out of which 10 are recognized by the UNESCO's Man and Biosphere program. The last part, which are the institutions which mainly are established either by an act or by an executive resolution and all. So here what you need to study is that you need to study their mandate, what for they have established, then how they are established, is it a statutory organization or came from an executive resolution, etc. Then comes what exactly is their role, what are they actually doing, or what all things they can do or what all things they cannot do. For that you need to have a proper boundary, what all things they can do or what they cannot do. So these are the things you need to study under institution. Under protected area networks you need to study what exactly for them they are established and what are the difference between each of them and who has the responsibility or power to create any of these protected area networks. And regarding action policy we have already discussed, and that concludes our national level initiatives. So once you go through all these areas which are mentioned under biodiversity conservation, you will get some knowledge about how things are happening. Then you can even add. Okay, this list is not complete. I won't say that this list this is a comprehensive list. You can add on to this list, and once you have this list, you can easily add on to this, and you can easily map where exactly something is coming. So that will I hope this short session has got some inputs to you to help you in studying environment and ecology, especially biodiversity conservation. Thank you.